Hi, Julian. How are you?
Very good, thank you, Nozam. Good to hear from you, and thank you
Yes,
for this invite. It's very, very pleasing to be asked by someone as good as yourself to be interviewed. So thank you.
thank you very much. And friends, here is Julian, and he's one of the renowned astrologers. So let me tell more about you, Julian. So here is Julian for us. He has discovered astrology in 1989, and he knew that he found his life's passion. And it was until 2001 that he decided to become a professional astrologer. In 2003, he began studying through the Faculty of Astrological Studies, attending 5 consecutive Oxford University summer schools. He was awarded the Diploma in 2010. In 2006, he also did Deborah Houlding's traditional horary course. He traveled the world giving astrology lectures, including Sydney, Melbourne, in Australia, New York City, Atlanta, USA, Kolkata in India, and London, UK. Here is Julian for us, so let us know more about him. When he was in Australia in 2007, he was commissioned to write the midpoint interpretations for solar fire gold astrology software. So again, so Julian, that's amazing meeting you. So how did you get into astrology?
Well, I had in 1988, I had a crossroads in my life. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was 21 years old, and I couldn't work out what it was I was meant to do. I just had no idea. And I happened to meet through a friend of a friend. I happened to meet two astrologers. They were a couple, and they said, "Should we do your chart for you?" You know, I was like, "Well, what do you mean? You know, never heard of astrology." You know, they were like, "Well, let's just give us your birth date and birth time, and we'll work something out for you." And so I waited a few days, and they hand drew me the mathematical chart, and then said, here you go. And I remember being presented this page with all these symbols and a diagram on it, and I was just like, well, this is interesting. And immediately I actually got this feeling that this was everything I should have been taught at school, that I wasn't taught at school. And I was just like, well, this clearly puts everything together into one place. You know, like this is all the subjects, because it's, you know, it's everything. So that, and that actually, when you look back into history, astrology is the original education of life, and it is the divine science.
Wonderful,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. And how is astrology different from numerology?
Well, astrology actually uses the symbols of the planets. So symbols on the astrology chart represent the planets. Numerology is just the work of numbers. Whereas with astrology, you're actually looking at symbols. And in a way, I like to see the symbols as like an equation. Each symbol is an equation of time that make up the whole. Together they make up the complete moment. We are in a sort of we're in one space, one time, one experience, but there's multi levels of that, and each of those can be defined as different time cycles. So to me, like people show in mathematics and things, they have symbols for meaning things. I believe that the planetary symbols mean like a particular equations, if you like. So, for example, the moon is 28 days. That's an equation of time. The symbol for the moon. The symbol for the sun is 1 year. The symbol for Jupiter, 12 years. The symbol for Saturn, 28 years, and so forth. So you get the idea that and that's what makes astrology different from numerology. It's a more, you're tracking out the actual movements of the planets as these different numerical symbolic equations, and as they make aspects to each other, they create different events in our experience. Whereas numerology has the similar thing, but it's more just pure number.
Got it.
Hmm.
Thank you. And when we are speaking about number, Julian, is number 13 really unlucky?
Ah, I don't think it is, because there are actually 13 lunar cycles within 1 year. You know, in the time that it takes the sun
Mhm.
to go all the way around the zodiac, 360 degrees or 365 days, which is the year, 360 degrees of the zodiac. That's 13 moon cycles. So that's the 13. So it's not unlucky. I think 13 as a myth that became the unlucky number due to the fact that astrology has, in the West anyway, had a long phase of being quite held back or repressed, or and so 13 moon cycles would be like, yeah, well, of course, it's it just makes it that attachment to that particular 13 lunar cycle would make it unlucky, but so that's how I see it. It's not unlucky at all.
And do you find difference between Eastern and Western astrology?
There is a big difference in India. The Vedic astrology uses sidereal zodiac, and in the West we use tropical zodiac, and the difference is in the precessions of the equinoxes. It's a bit too mathematical to go into it now. There is a difference, but we also follow very, very similar rules. So we understand the aspects of the planets between each other, for example. And Vedic astrology has a lot more complexity to it as well, in how they gain judgment of their charts. I haven't actually learnt Vedic. I am purely tropical Western astrology. Although saying that, I went to Kolkata twice for 2 big conferences, but was invited as a Western astrologer to give talks on Western style astrology. So that's where I got my, I learnt quite a bit about the differences in Kolkata, actually.
Okay, wonderful. And Julian, you have an interest in NLP, hypnosis, metaphors of movement, and various other things. So, do you apply these skills with your clients while conversing with them?
Well, I learnt NLP starting in 2007. I learnt with a chap called Michael Perez, who introduced me to Andrew Austin,
Mm-hmm.
and I did some learning with Andrew Austin at the beginning as well. So I did 3 weeks of very intensive NLP, and then I found that I was speaking amazing things. I got to the point where I could say things to people and they would just do things and stuff. And I actually found I'm a very sensitive type, a very watery, emotional, but a lot of fire as well. But the point being is that I found it actually quite too powerful almost. And in a way, I kind of felt I had to distance myself a little bit from it at the time. But I understand the power of language now through astrology as well. So for me, it's about everything is about what we say to each other. That's where real magic is in our language, in our tonality, and astrology, of course, is the art of language. It's the logos, astro, stars, logos, words. So it's the words from the stars. And you can take that right back to antiquity, to 5,000 or more years ago, and you're speaking the language of the stars. Now in NLP, when we do, and I don't remember much NLP at the moment, but I am planning on doing some relearning, so I can integrate it, because I know that there's a fantastic matching to be had between astrology and NLP. You take the chart as a set of dynamic words that can resonate with someone. So, someone has got something going on, if I looked at your chart, Nizam, yeah, I could say things that you would feel were like, yeah, wow, I get that, and then it's and that would be how you would that's the model of your own universe, if you like. With NLP, it would then reframing those words so that they could always be used to unlock greater parts of the self, unlock greater parts of self-knowledge or self-knowing, something like that. So it's an area that it's how I want to explain it is almost too difficult to explain it in just an interview like this.
Yes,
We
yes.
need to actually take the time to really converse this, you know,
Yes, yes.
and it's in a step-by-step process. And I think if I started with your chart, that's a good starting point, because then you're getting the direct experience. Okay.
Got it.
So that's how I would do. That's how I would do it. Yeah.
Because Julian, the reason for asking is, like one of my someone I knew, he went to an astrologer, and astrologer started telling like, you were born in the wrong time, you were born in the wrong place, and then you would never be able to succeed in the business. He was shattered. Then after counseling and coaching, no, he's doing very well. So that's where like the words, the way an astrologer speaks matters a lot. And today for the first time now I came to know that astro and logos, the messages from the stars, and it has the words that communicate. Thanks for clarifying.
Oh, well, you're welcome. If I may say,
Yes.
that I do think there's a big difference in Western tropical astrology, is that we have been developing on the lines of psychology and various things, and we don't do it fatalistically, right? So we don't cast the destiny with a judgment so much, right? That's not the cool way of doing it, if you understand what I mean. Now, what I'm trying to say there is, and that's what I found in India. If I was to just give you a little example, in 2016, okay, and this is not a problem that I have, because I have full respect for Jyotish, the science of the light, according to Indian astrology and Vedic astrology. Okay, full respect. Okay, because the profound insights can be gained from Indian astrology. Okay, but there's sometimes about the delivery of the astrology. Okay,
Exactly.
therefore, what the client then receives from the astrologer, okay, can create problems. Okay,
Yes.
so for me, and the experience, what I got with this, I'll just explain it like this, which I think is the solution as well. In 2016, I was invited to Kolkata to a big conference hosted by a very successful Indian astrologer, who 4 generations in his family astrology. Okay, so very established, and he was invited Western astrologers over, and I was told that it would be because they want to listen to Western astrology. They want to have some new concepts to think about. So I decided I would present them a talk on what we call the midpoint system in astrology, which is, and there's a point in there called the Sun Moon midpoint, which is about marriage. Okay, and it's a completely new Western, well, not completely new, because it's been around for about 70, 80 years, the midpoint system. But it was this point in the chart that can be used to find a happy partnership, right? Or happy marriage or something like that, you see. And I thought, well, I'll present them and talk about that, because I know that in India, the astrologer is used very much for the idea of finding partnerships and marriages. So I presented this talk on the Sun Moon midpoint, and they turned the cameras off from me after 10 minutes, and just had it pointing at a point of the stage, and they wouldn't show the things on the screen because I was really telling them stuff that was really quite far out, And afterwards, they said, "Well, thank you for your talk, Julian. But you must understand that Vedic astrology is enshrined in law, in Hindu culture, and it cannot be changed, right? So we have to contain our system exactly as it is. Now, I respect that completely. I understand exactly why, you know, because it's a very, very profound, insightful system of the stars. It's the star language, okay? But there's a slightly archaic approach, okay, to that. In that a lot of astrologers there who are taught really insightfully, and they are so psychic. I mean, they are so intuitive. It's amazing, you know. But they pass judgment in such a way that it could be create a difficult response in the client.
Yes.
Okay, so and because it's enshrined in law, they can't do anything about it. You know, well, that's the way I was taught to do it, and that's the way I'm always going to do it. You know, as it were. You know, there's real structure behind it. So now in the West, it's completely different. You see, in the West, we've struggled for the last 250 years, 300 years. We've struggled massively to try and get astrology accepted or even noticed and not be laughed at, right? Because in the West, it's like astrology, you know, and we as astrologers, we just are like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. We get to have the power of the stars, you know, but it's not accepted in society, right? Not at any great level, right? Everyone just kind of laughs at it. But if you discover it, you're really onto something. You know that you found something very special, okay? And that's how it is in the West, all right? Such that today in the 21st century, there's now an upwave, right? There's a big kind of surfing wave rising, you know, of astrology and popularity. It's now getting bigger and bigger than the critics who would criticize it or would hold it down, you know, which is how it's been, right, for years. You know, the church, science, right, the two greatest opponents of astrology, right? Just because if they were to accept it, they would have to start studying astrology properly, right? And there's something about them not wanting that, you know, for the people, for the masses. Okay, there's a rigidity there, okay, which is in its own way, it's a bit like the rigidity of the law holding Vedic astrology in its place. Okay, so but we have anybody who discovers astrology can use it. So there's this upwave. Okay, so we're now starting to surf this really incredible wave where we're starting to realize that and science is getting there. You know, they talk about quantum physics and all this sort of stuff. You know, and I'm not a physicist. You know, I'm not even a mathematician, really. You know, but I'm an astrologer. You know, but I know that gradually they're so close to getting it. They talk about it in ways that is, you just know that they're kind of talking astrology without talking astrology. And it's kind of like, oh, you know, when are you guys going to get this? You know, when are the astrophysicists, when are they going to get this? You know, and so I know it's close. I know it's soon, you know, but we're not quite there yet. But now the wave of popularity is getting really big. And of course, it's largely due to the fact that we have computers now, making astrology very simple, you see. Because back in the day, prior to computers, one had to have a very advanced education in order to be an astrologer. You had to be able to cast a chart, you know. You had to actually be able to calculate and work out the astrology. You know, here's, in fact, an ephemeris. This is the table of you know, that is,
yeah.
That's a logarithm, right? That's an algorithm. It's an algorithm, you know. That's planetary data, you know, and that's the movement of planets. To me, that's like a book of magic, you know. But it's all numbers, but it's numbers of symbols of the planets. You see symbols of planets at the top, and then it's like, that planet is at that place in that number. It means this, you know, balancing off against that number. Oh well, that's definitely going to be something in the news or whatever, right? So you know, and we're getting there because, of course, data science is a big thing. But you see, it's only just dawned on people, right? And this is because there's a very clever book that just got published at the beginning of this year. It's called A Scheme of Heaven by a chap called Alexander Boxer, and he's a PhD data scientist, and he studied the history of astrology and presented it in a book. And he's pro-astrology from a science background. Wow. I'm loving that book. It's great. It's so great. Wow. And it just reveals all, you see.
Wonderful.
So,
And Julian,
Yeah.
you're doing different trainings, and you have also written book on astrology. So first, could you please explain about the kind of trainings you offer? Because I see years of training people keep doing, but they don't get anywhere. So what kind of trainings do you offer?
Mm. Well, I am teaching astrology at the moment. I'm doing it online on Zoom, so anybody can join. I'm teaching beginners at the moment. It's building up though. I can teach any level actually, I'm trying. I'm holding a group together. Start to do it on Zoom. I've got a new theory that is actually an old theory that I'm rediscovered. And I'm going to put that into my first non-fiction astrology book, which I hopefully will get written towards the end of this year and published next year. And I'm quite excited about it because I think this is where things like metaphors of movement and NLP come in, because we have a consciousness map, emanating from our very center, the center of self is like, well, I don't think I want to talk about my theory. I do want to talk about my theory, but I don't right now. I'll do a separate interview with you for that one.
Sure.
Yeah. But I have written a novel as the other side of things. I've wrote a novel about the Great Fire of London, which was in the 17th century, so 350 years ago. There was a fire in London, and it was predicted by an astrologer, and that's not taught in schools. And I discovered that as a true story, and I wrote about it. And that's a book that people can buy on my website if you like a novel to read. But yeah, I teach, and if you like, Nizam, I can teach a group for you. If you want to put something together, then we can talk about this, because
Yeah, sure.
like this on Zoom. So, and I can teach Western astrology for you, you see, so which is a lot more liberating, maybe, but it's the same thing, it is the study of the stars.
Yes. So, Julian, please tell more about your training sessions. Like, how are there any levels, or what is the duration, or what is it that?
Yeah. So I would say that it's ongoing with me. You have to, because astrology takes a long time to learn. It's not something you learn overnight. And the more life experience you have, the better astrologer you are, because you relate to previous experiences and you see the cycles, how things have repeated in one's life. So for me, it's an ongoing thing. It starts with, say, 10 weeks of just the planets. So 10 lessons of the planets. And then I would do 3 lessons on the zodiac signs. So it would be the classifying the signs, the 12 zodiac signs. And then I would do the houses. And then, so there's it's 10 lessons to start with. Get those first 10 lessons down, and you've got a framework to understand the dynamics of time, the dynamics of what these planets are. Because when you start to, my whole goal with astrology is, I call it what's called, in the 17th century in the UK, I've seen a publication of this in one of the old books, and it was called supernatural sight. Okay, supernatural. To be an astrologer, you would have supernatural sight. And what that actually means, right, because the Victorians, 200 years ago, the word supernatural was linked to something that was scary or, frightening. Supernatural, ooh, ghostly or something, right? But the real origin of supernatural is to be superior, right? Natural, nature, yeah, and sight, as in to see something or to perceive something. So supernatural sight is to be a heightened perception of the world around you, of your nature and the nature of others. And that is what I try to teach, right? Because you can learn a lot in just learning the 10 planets, because you start to see it in people, right? So when someone's speaking, you're listening to their Mercury. When someone's relating, you see who they're relating to. That's their Venus. When someone takes action on something, you see their Mars. When someone is, responding to something, you see their Moon. When someone is working at something, you see their Saturn. When someone is believing or has their faith somewhere, you're seeing their Jupiter. So all these things you see are the dynamics of personality. If you fine tune to those, once you recognize those, you start to see everything. Because in where we are in our life, we're in the physical realm, the physical matter, 3D, or the solid form. We're in what's called the sublunary sphere. We are under the sphere of the moon. That is to say, we are on Earth, in governed by the four elements, fire, earth, air, water, and ether, which is the spirit that binds it all. But there's the fire, earth, air, water, the four elements, and we're in under the dome of the moon, right? Which is like a sphere, like a sphere. And that is what we have to be born through, right? So that's why lunar moon rules women and birth and life and gestation and all these things, is because in order to experience life in this realm, we have all the souls are descending all the time through the heavens, and then they get to the moon, and that becomes the birth. So that's lunar, or the moon, and that's the world we're in, So the ancients used to call it the realm of generation and corruption, because, and these are things that are not talked about in the West very much. You see, it's like, yeah, okay. So what is generation and corruption? Generation is being born, living your life, and dying to be reborn again inside the realm. So you go back and forth, back and forth. But in the West, of course, we haven't been taught about reincarnation. We haven't been taught about anything like that. All that's been forgotten, brushed under the carpet, that whole thing. So when you start to see the traditional viewpoint, the ancient viewpoint of astrology, everything before 1500s, because in 1500s it was Copernicus who came up with the heliocentric theory of astrology, which is that the Earth is going around the sun. Prior to that time, for more than 2,500 years, the Earth was at the center, and all the planets went around it. But what that is, Earth was unmoved and still at the center, and all the planets went around it. And that's called the geocentric viewpoint. But the geocentric viewpoint is just the mind, because everything is mind, right? The fact that I'm looking at you now on the screen, it's a mind projection. The fact that I can see this and I can hear you, it's just my mind.
Amazing.
Well, it is, and that mind map. So we have a mind map, right? And that's where NLP comes in. And that's where you can start to see the crossover between neuro-linguistics, how to talk to our brain, how to talk to the mind. With astrology, how to talk to the words of the stars. So it's neuro-linguistics with astro-linguistics. And there's that common ground between the two. And that common ground is the heavens, the spheres of consciousness that stretch out from the center of being, the geocentric, from the geocentric. And that's what I'm talking with Andrew Austin about at the moment. We haven't really got down to it yet, actually. We skirt around the edges of what we've got to do, but we know what we've got to do, and we know that there's something really special to be flipped open, something really amazing, and we're getting there. We just haven't really set the time aside to really theorize. We're philosophizing at the moment. We can see this big picture.
Yes.
And we're kind of like, we got to kind of get this down into something like that. Make this thing. So I'm very happy, for example, Nizam, as since you are a practitioner of NLP and you have an interest in all these things, to talk to you about it as well. So And of course, Andrew said, talk to Nizam. You know, so we can talk, you know,
Yes.
about this because, you know, if you'd like a chart reading, I'll read your chart, and you can see how I do this. You know, how we can talk about this. So.
Wonderful. And Julian,
Yeah.
is astrology used only for predictions?
Well, predictions is understanding that everything is cyclic. Okay. So it comes back around. So therefore, because we've seen it before, we can see it again. I'm not so sure about prediction. I'm not a fan of prediction.
Wonderful. And this coming from an astrologer is awesome.
Say again.
This coming from an astrologer is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, good. I think everyone is unique.
Yes.
I think that I like to read the present moment, as in, yeah, you know, like for example, right now as we're speaking, you know, the moon is making good aspect to Mercury right now, right? So we're talking. Our feelings are aligned to our critical function, you know, to our thinking. You know, feelings are aligned with thinking right now in a practical way. Okay, and this for the next few hours is happening right now. It's a perfect time that you asked for an interview today, that we did it today, because of this moon linking to Mercury. Yeah, so there's something really, there's just something very grounded. You know, they're both in Earth signs, so there's something practical and methodical to be ascertained here. You know, to sort of work with a method or practice, and that's, you know, I just think about it now. You know, I just jump. Having not spoken to you for a few weeks, because we could have lined this up weeks ago. It's funny that we're doing it now, and I just realised. I was just like, hang on a minute. Right now, it is in fact Moon trine Mercury, which is perfect. So, you know, so it's about working with the potential that time gives us. You know, lots of little portals are opening up all the time. Lots of moments, and you know, I'm quite, how do I describe it? I'm very flowing or wavy with time. You know, I find it very difficult to really tune into something, to really kind of take the initiative on things. I know some astrologers who plan things out brilliantly in their diaries. You know, they'll be like, right, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And they look at the ephemeris, they look at all this, and they plan it out. And you see them planning it out by highlighting different days, hours, you know, got to do this, and they build their lives around that, their successful rate of success. I find that actually quite difficult to do. And it's just the way that my moon is. I have moon in Pisces, so it's very flowing, you know, and unfathomable, quite oceanic, like being in the big sea, you know. And so I have to kind of just go with the moment. But I think that's part of why I am like I am, or to perceive the link, the all-important link between NLP and astrology. I did IEMT, so I learned NLP in 2007, and that's when I met Andrew Austin. And then I think I joined his mailing list, or, you know, got his newsletter or something. But then I found out he started doing this IEMT, which is the eye movement thing.
Yes.
And I signed up for that in 2011. I think I did the course, or like a weekend course. And I told him then, I just said, look, I said, I know you're seeking the great answers and things. And I said, I tell you, Andrew, it's astrology and NLP together is going to do it. Right? I said, I can't think any, you know, I said, you need to get your head around the astrology, because, you know, and he wasn't taking it on board at that point. Right. And he was just like, you know, because he was doing IMT. That was his big thing at the time. And then 2 years ago, or about 18 months ago, I started teaching astrology again after having not taught it, because I went through a very lull phase, a very slow phase. I'm bringing up my daughter and stuff, and just wasn't doing much astrology. And I thought, well, I'll get back into it again, and I started teaching. And he signed up for my beginners course, and when he signed it, he contacted. We hadn't spoken to each other for 7 years, 8 years or something. And he said, hello, and I've been thinking a lot about what you said all those years ago, and I think I want to find out more. And I was like, brilliant, Andrew, and that got us talking again. You see, so we've been talking on and off a bit for about a year and a bit. And he's understanding astrology now because I've given him some basics, and so we are getting close to this now, this union of the minds, of the two types of approach to create something new. There's something to be born, there's something to happen, we've got something going, but we need to formulate it more. The birth chart is the key. And then how the symbols in the chart equal language, and that's people's modeling of their world. Yeah. So.
Yes, got it. And Julian, is when an astrologer predicts something, or gives his or her reading, so is that just a probability, or is it finite, or can it be changed?
Well, again, I want to tread very carefully about fatalism. I don't think it's the right path, and the last thing I want is and I think I've been quite successful at this. Because people don't say to me, oh, you said something that really hurt, or something like that. Because I think I've always been, and I attribute that to doing NLP, actually, because I've always tried to get the person to talk from a counseling perspective, because the client will always talk their chart. That's what they do. They talk their own chart. So you just let them talk and you'll hear it. You'll see all the things. You'll see the chart come alive with the client describing their life to you, So it's like, well, there it is, And then it's like, well, you just said that. So if you said that, then what do you think about this? Yeah. And so that's how I do a reading,
Wow.
It's like, if you say, oh, I was trying to get that job and blah, 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 and I ended up getting another job, and, now I'm doing this. It's like, well, do you think it might be because of that? And that's the key to then giving them the enlightened, if you like, the glimpse of themselves, that they then see it, you see? And that's how I kind of progress with a reading, is to keep things very open, never to be definite. The words carry so much power.
Yes.
And so if you're definite, you're not allowing a person the freedom to express themselves. Because if you tell them something that's too strong a judgment, they then you're locking them into a realm that they find very difficult to get out of. Whereas if you leave it very fluid and open, they can swim around a bit and find their way, and then get the best expression they can from that particular dynamic, which ultimately is karma, because whereas a Vedic astrologer might go, oh, well, you're never going to get this, you're never going to get that, and blah, 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 a Western astrologer would be like, well, keep open to all things, because as you experiment and try with different facets of your life in a particular area, you'll always be learning about yourself, right? It's a different way of saying, oh, well, oh, you won't get married, or you won't have this, or you won't have that. It's a, well, no, be free to explore and see what you find. Is a different way. Do you see what I'm trying to say, though? Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. It's there's got to be more openness, in how to communicate.
Got it. So, thanks a lot, Julian, for your wonderful time and sharing your years of experience. It was a very new approach to see how the modern astrology is evolving. And uh, how about if someone is, whoever is watching this interview, they want to get your reading, and they want your consultation, so could you please tell about that?
Yes, well, thank you, Nizam. At the moment, I think the way the world is, consultations can be very easily done over Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Like this interview right now.
Wow.
So I would Nizam knows that he will be my booking agent.
Mm-hmm.
So please approach Nizam to ask for a reading through me, and Nizam can then organise that. Okay.
Sure.
So
Would love that.
Nizam will be my booking agent, and but I look forward to talking to all of you. I will present you a fascinating way of looking at your chart that will be a lot more modern. And I do believe give you plenty of more room to explore all the potential of your life. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And friends, to know more about Julian and his works, you can visit londonastrologer.com, and you have all his details there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank
once
you.
again, Julian. It was
Thank you very
very
much, Azam. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.